Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, we're going to talk about Resident Evil 7, or also Biohazard 7, as it's known in Japan. So, Resident Evil 7, the first thing I want to make very clear in this review is this is pretty much 99.9% talking about playing this game in VR. I will have some minor things to say about non VR because there are two DLCs that don't have VR mode. And VR is currently, of this video, still only exclusively on PS4. As far as I know, there isn't even a fan patch type thing for it on PC, which is kind of surprising actually, considering like the Wii emulator Dolphin has fucking VR in it. So, yeah. Anyway, so I got the gold edition last year and played through it for Halloween and never got around to doing the review for it. And that's what we're fixing now here. So, just sit down, sit a while, listen to my tale. So, the gold edition has all of them except for one DLC available on the physical disc if you're going physical route, just to note. However, that one DLC that isn't on there is free for everyone, regardless if you got the gold or the base game. This is on Xbox One, PS4, PC, and it has a wacky Japanese Switch stream version that I hold horrible. But as I said, this is in VR, so obviously we're on the PS4. So let's talk about each of these DLCs and the base game and everything in order. So first thing, of course, the base game. So I gotta say, I really liked this. You have to come into the aspect of understanding that I grew up with Resident Evil 2 being the game that drew me into survival horror, and then I stemmed from Resident Evil 2 to other Resident Evils and Silent Hill and other corny knockoff titles and Alone in the Dark and such and that. And Resident Evil 4 is about like the only modern entry I like outside of the tank control ones. Like 5, it's fun with a friend, very action oriented. 6, I can't get any of my friends want to play with me on it because they hate it so much. And the AI is so fucking awful, so I've never really got around to ever finishing it. And I haven't even picked up the Revelation games, actually, oddly enough. I've only been dabbling in some Resident Evil stuff. Like, I bought the Asian exclusive of that terrible, like, Counter-Strike-ish, like, one that was terrible. Man, what have I done with my life? But Resident Evil 7 VR has been paraded even to now as one of the like greatest VR games you could play, especially on PlayStation when it comes to the consoles, because it's limited on Switch and Xbox only has none. Though there are also rumors about the series maybe getting VR, so that might be interesting to see. But so the setting of this game is removed from the main series. Like it is still in the Resident Evil universe. It's not a reboot or any weird shit that. But they kind of took a step back and like, let's have some kind of other scenario here that happens. And I think that was a good idea because really, when you think about some of the last few entries, they kind of were just trying to convolute more. Like, what can we do more with the plot here? So I think it was a good step to kind of isolate the situation from previous ones, but yet still kind of have reminiscing connections here and there that might be slightly questionable. That are likely leading into Resident Evil 8, as we know a few tidbits from that through leaks and the trailers that have gone officially released of it. But you play as Ethan, a new character whose wife has gone missing, and all of a sudden, after it's been so long, you get a message to not come and find her at some freaking place in the Louisiana swamp of that. So you go out there against what she says, and you go find her and shit, and you get wrapped up into this whole fucking mess that happens. So I like to cut up the base game into 3 chapters that I think represent the overarching way the series has gone. Chapter 1, which is classic survival horror. This part is where you're trapped in the baker's house, who is the family you encounter when looking for your wife, who are holding your wife hostage in a way, in a crazy person's way. And you learn more about that through the story. Obviously, I'm trying to keep spoilers to the minimum. So, the baker's house is basically a classic location, like being trapped in the mansion, Resident Evil 1. Puzzles all abound, enemies that stalk you, and the molded, the new foes of the game. These molded creatures, you learn later of how they came to be that, but they are everywhere in this place, and they come from the walls, the floors, the ceilings, from oogie googie mold everywhere. And they are pretty much what you would expect from like zombie enemies. You could shoot their arms and heads off and shit, but like zombies, shooting their heads off is the effective way of murdering them. And as the game goes, you get a few different versions of molded, but one of the big criticisms with this game is a lack of enemies. There are very few versions of the molded, and then a few other enemy types, like bug types, that happen a little later in the game and that. And it is something to criticize. But many familiar elements, like having a storage box, limited inventory, hoarding items you need, being cautious of how you use your limited resources in your situation, especially when you're cranking up that difficulty and you're having so little resources, and many puzzles to be solved in the early portion of the game. The baker's house is pretty universally agreed to be the best part of the game a lot of times. Most people say it's the best part of the game. The second part of the game I would call the Saw moment. As you get introduced and get to know the bakers, the husband, who's just a crazy powerhouse, the mother, who's an insane lunatic with insects, the daughter, Zoe, who's trying to help you, and a brother, who is basically just Jigsaw's whip-off copycat. And then you also have the little daughter and grandma. Now, the son in this delightful family takes a portion of the game to throw many traps, jokes, and shitty ways to try and murder you for a portion of the game. Which is why I like to call it the Saw moment, because it really feels like you're being thrown in the situation where you need to be careful of instant kill traps, explosions, and all kinds of shitty ways that you can get killed pretty fluvously. And the last portion of the game is, of course, the modern time of Resident Evil, where it gets very action-oriented. You have a lot of guns, ammo, and just lots of molten shit are being thrown at you. And that's how I like to split up the base game, in my opinion. So, like I said, a lot of people consider the Baker House to be the best moment, so you kind of go from what's considered the best to subjectively okay to sometimes the worst, because a lot of people don't usually get too into the more action-oriented Resident Evils as much. But, it's all subjective, The fan base has a lot of different entries they like. You got the old, the new, and all that, so. But I think there's a good amount of everything for regardless of what portion of the fan base you're in. Now, as you play through the game, you will encounter Jack multiple times, who basically acts as the game's nemesis, who just fucks with you a lot. Certain segments he's after you in certain portions of the game. Other times he's a recurring boss who just fucking shows up to screw around with you. He can be pretty much the most scary thing in the game, honestly. But me, I hate bugs, so I hated the wife. I hate bugs. So, and if you're playing in VR, you get close and personal to some of these terrifying scenes, my friend. I honestly gotta say, it is a treat to play this game in VR. Now, while on the VR note, if you're playing in VR, you don't use move controls. You use a controller still, and it still pretty much acts exactly how it does outside of VR. The only difference is the entire camera is controlled by the VR, so you can quickly look all around you and everything quickly and more efficiently in VR while still doing all the combat stuff and that with your controller. I know there's people who are disappointed in that, but I think it makes sense why it's like that, because, like I said, the VR is only on PlayStation. Going into insane detail with the move, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying it's a great excuse, but I can understand from the business aspect. Sony likely paid for the exclusivity of VR for the PS4 version. And whether that will affect any kind of next-gen versions, because I'm sure that'll probably happen, who knows? But it's still the only one with VR. They paid money for it, likely. I'm sure money exchanged hands. And I don't think Capcom looked at as being viable time to design the game's move controls for literally one system out of all the other ones that it would be on. So from a business aspect, I kind of understand why they did it. But yeah, if you're expecting to use the move wands, don't. I do think it works really well with a controller still, though. Though, the one thing I do have to criticize for sure for using the controller, though, is I don't understand why in VR mode you still have armless, like, your arms, like, up to, like, a little before it reaches your elbow and there's nothing there further back. And during struggle, like, scenes that are pre-done, like, you can't really change what happens with the two interactions in a struggle or something. Like, you'll see moments where you don't see the rest of the arm in there, and I don't understand why they did that in the VR version, because in non-VR you don't see that. But I don't understand why they do that in VR when you're still using a controller. So you can't, you know, do weird things with your arms like you would normally do with, like, move wands or what any other type of move controls for PC and that. It just seemed like an odd thing considering you're stuck using a controller either way. But outside of that, I really like the VR mode so much better. Like, how to describe this? You know, you ever get in, like, a conversation with a PC elitist and they're like, oh man, I can't use these analog sticks because without the mouse and keyboard, I can do it so much quicker. And honestly, that's how I would exactly describe going from VR to non-VR. It feels so sluggish and everything compared to how quickly I was able to just boom, 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 boom versus my head and my controller. And it's so much more immersive and everything, of course. Now, obviously, being in VR, the quality, you know, you can see some bits of texture and blur and things. Sadly, PlayStation 4 VR does, you know, do some blurring. So, depending on how much time they really put work into it, sometimes, like, I mean, I've seen some VR games on PS4 with really terrible looking text and textures and that just look really bad. Oof. Overall, 7 looks really good, though. You still can find a few minor slips and mishandles, but considering all the detail they went into, especially with, like, the Baker House, there were so many disgusting things on their fucking property, because you get to go under the house and back the yard, the greenhouse and shit. Like, there's all kinds of fucking terrible looking things to look at, and then VR just, oh man. But I would say it's absolutely perfect, of course. But I really, really enjoy the VR mode. Outside of how I described the base game, I think that really covers it. You know, it's in a first-person sense, so whether you're in VR or non-VR, it's all first-person, but it's in a slow, collective way, where it feels much more like a traditional Resident Evil game until you get more closer to the end, where you really start packing more heat and shit. But for a good portion of the game, it really feels like a more traditional Resident Evil game, and I really enjoyed that. I really hope they can capture that for at least a good portion of 8. I don't mind having some, because I mean, even old Resident Evil games sometimes had action oriented. Like Code Veronica had a few moments of doing a whole bunch of action during portions of the game, and that. I'm not necessarily against having a portion of a gameplay, especially obviously at the end. It's kind of expected usually at the end of a lot of games to be a little more action oriented. So I mean, I think it was a nice compromise for a lot of fans. Environment's good, exploring, getting keys, puzzles, figuring out shit. And of course there's extra stuff like finding these coins that give you a choice on increasing or a different type of gun that you can kind of debate what you would whether have in between that. Now, I'd say the worst thing in this game, in my opinion though, is some of the story within its own self kinda, how should I say, a little conflicting. Some of it's a little confusing with like how the what created the molded and what's happening to the bakers and that. There's certain details that kind of conflict a lot and show. And if I remember quickly, I think this game had multiple writers and a lot of thought on that had to do with maybe they didn't do a very good job crossing each other's notes. I mean, it's not the end of the world. I mean, come on, a lot of old Resident Evils aren't perfect either in that same sense. So, but you know, we're in a more modern time, so you would think they would do a little better job on that, though. But it was also some nice callback references to older Resident Evil games, like Who Built the Baker's House. There was a nice reference to one of the characters from Resident Evil Outbreak, which I always have to keep reminding people, Resident Evil Outbreak is canon. Capcom has said it is canon. They just never said what scenarios are or aren't canon. So we've never really truly known if like all the survivors in Outbreak got out in that. So 7 actually conforms one of them who actually survived. So, but nice though. There's a lot of nice little callbacks to things in other Resident Evil games than this, and that is just really nice. So for just the base game of Resident Evil 7, what would I recommend? Because base game, depending on your skill, you know, difficulty and how much trouble you're having and stuff, you're kind of looking at like probably around 15 hours to 20 hours in time frame. It's not a insane long game. Like, I think my time play of everything, including all the DLC and everything, I think it was about 25 hours together. So I'd say like 15 hours for like the base game is about, I'd say, like the average time of that. But it was a very good experience in my opinion. So I would give the base game Resident Evil a good, solid, nice $60 game if you're going with VR. I have to say the VR mode to me is worth a $60 experience in my opinion. Now, luckily, of course, Resident Evil 7's been out for quite a while now, so obviously that's not a problem anymore. You can get the base game easily for like $15 to $20, or the golden version. Like right now, it's $27 brand new on Amazon for the golden version, which has all the DLCs that are paid for on the disc. And then, like I said, the last one was free for everyone. So there was a lot of cheap prices you can get on this, and then of course it's on PC, and you know you can get Steam sale, whatever, on that front. That depending on what you want to do. If you want to do the Switch option, though, as far as I know, that was a Japanese only option. Some weird stream thing to your Switch, and I hope it's awful. And I think it's not even available anymore, so I wouldn't really bother looking up that one anyway. But it is on Xbox One, PS4, and PC in that sense. Now, since we're dealing with a lot of DLC, I'm kind of going to go over all the story stuff just at the end still. So we'll just kind of moving along through each thing. So, going into the DLC was cut up into 4 things. You had Banned Footage Volume 1, Banned Footage Volume 2, The End of Zoe, and Not a Hero. Now, these are all really different in like, the banned footage is a mix of things. So, banned footage 1 and 2 together, you get Bedroom, Nightmare, Ethan Must Die, Dawdles, 21, and Jack's 55th birthday. Now, 2 of these are the only thing out of all Resident Evil 7 stuff on PS4 that is non-VR is Ethan Must Die and Jack's 55th birthday. I don't know why they don't have VR, because they still play like Resident Evil 7. It's not like it's a totally different game, which is weird considering 21 literally is a different type of game. But, so, let's go through these. So, Bedroom, Nightmare, and 21 are actually a continuing story of the character from the quote-unquote demo prequel to Resident Evil 7, which is free on PS4 at least. I don't know if that's on anything else, actually. I don't know if is Resident Evil 7 demo on it? It takes place before the main game. You play as a character that was from a television crew that sadly got abducted by the Bakers. So, Nightmare, Bedroom, I believe the order is Bedroom, then Nightmare, then 21, I believe is the order. But you continue this guy's story of trying to escape the Bakers. Bedroom, you're trapped in a bedroom and you're trying to slowly, unknowingly escape from it. It feels kind of like a weird version of Five Nights at Freddy's, where you're kind of dealing with someone taking a peek at you and trying not to freak them out. Nightmare is a multi-day, you're trapped in the basement and multiple nights are passing as you clear out waves of molded and fight Jack to try and get out of the basement. And then 21 is a game of blackjack. That it is a bizarre game of blackjack where you're trying to survive these very crazy rules of being murdered while playing essentially blackjack. One thing to say about 21, the end portion of the DLC of 21 basically forces you to... It kind of does a dick move that if you don't do the right thing the game wants you can't actually win. So that's kind of a dick move, but it's interesting, and it actually adds Nightmare and 21 both have more replayability, because like I said, Nightmare is basically like a horde mode. You know, you get all kinds of guns, take on waves of molded and Jack and shit, so there's a lot of extras in there for replaying that, and 21 has a lot of bizarre kind of extras with it too. Like, I believe there was a mode for like trying to survive as long as possible without being killed or that. Pretty weird. They have replayability, and like I said, they all have VR, so you can enjoy playing a deadly Saw version of blackjack in VR, oddly enough. Dawdles is more story stuff. Like I said, Bedroom Nightmares 21 is a continuation of the character from the demo. Technically part of the story, but not really a point. A completely irrelevant character that doesn't really matter to the grand scheme of the rest of the games. Dawdles is a prequel as well, and it takes place even before the demo. It takes place and explains what happened to the Baker's family, basically ground zero of the main plot of the base game, and you get to experience that from Zoe's perspective. Kinda has a bullshit thing you have to do in it to beat it, honestly, similar to 21, and I think it's worse than Dawdles, because it's just something you wouldn't really think of. I had to actually look up how to get the good ending for Dawdles and not the bad ending. The good ending leads into Resident Evil 7, so, you know, the canon ending. But there is a bad ending for it, and that's likely what you're going to get if you go into it blind, not knowing. Now, Ethan Must Die is an insane death one. Like, it's. Let's take the bagel and the greenhouse, make rogue elements where you have to run through them and think like this random loot, random mobs, all kind of like tons of random elements, and it's super hard, and Ethan can die very easily. On top of that, it has a bit of a Dark Souls element to it. Well, when you die, something gets left there where you died, so you can actually go back to where you died and get something from your previous playthrough, because the items are random, and some of them can even just be deadly bombs that can kill you. It's very weird. I did not beat Ethan Must Die or Jack's 55th birthday. They are both just extra insane things that have nothing to do with the story. Ethan Must Die is basically for crazy skilled people. If you're not crazy skilled, you're probably not going to get far. Ethan Must Die also has a very strange color system that might be the reason it's not in VR, because it has a very strong coloring of red, but I don't know. It's not in VR, and it's how I got the experience the controls in non-VR Ethan Must Die and Jack's 55th birthday. And man, I could, again, controls feel so sluggish when you go from VR to the controller playing it on a TV normally. I'm not saying you can't play it that way. It just definitely feels weird when you played pretty much all this content before those two. Like, those were the last two things I played on this, and it's so weird going to that. Now, Jack's 55th birthday is a really bizarre, silly, funny, ha-ha thing. So, you have to go collect these foods, and you bring them to Jack to eat, and you can combo and spice them up and stuff, and you're just basically trying to get Jack to eat so much and get a high score. It unlocks a few additional stages that are based on areas in the base game. I did not really play much of it, and you have to unlock the different stages by doing a good job in other ones, so I didn't really get to experience the full thing. Basically just a side, fun, silly thing. Not story again, like I said. It has no VR. Going back to the rest of the DLC, the end of Zoe is Zoe is the daughter of the Bakers, one of the three children, and it takes place after the base game. So I'm not gonna get into the story too much, but the end of Zoe, you play as Zoe's uncle, so another baker, and this guy, don't get in his fucking way. This is a weird DLC because you basically have no guns. You have one projectile, which is spears that you can find and throw them at the molded. But for the most part, you're literally playing fucking Punch-Out with these fucking monsters as this crazy redneck guy running through the swamp looking for Zoe. So it's a very different experience from all the rest of the game for sure. And like I said, it takes place after Seven's main story, so you could consider it a extension of the ending. And the free DLC that's available for everyone as a download, again, currently at this time is not on any physical version. It's only a free download, not a hero. Now, I want to warn you, at this point, I don't think we can avoid spoilers anymore, because not a hero spoils a thing that happens at the end of Resident Evil 7. So we're going to go into spoiler territory. So before I go into that, I will say I definitely recommend getting the Gold Edition. It's easy to get, like under $30, brand new. You can obviously get cheap or used. It is a collection of everything. And again, I do recommend VR mode, but I'm sure if you don't try VR mode first and then play it in flat screen, you can still obviously play it that way. But it's definitely what I think is the preferred way playing it. Even though if you're like a big graphic PC whore, I think getting the experience it in VR is a worthy sacrifice in my opinion. But that's just me. That depends on what you consider important. So let's go on into Not a Hero. This is free. It's available for everyone. So Not a Hero, you play as Chris Redfield. Now, when you get to the end of Resident Evil 7, Chris shows up to help Ethan and try to figure out what's going on. So, Resident Evil 7, you find out the little girl is not actually a daughter of the Bakers, but she's actually a bioweapon that has been experimented on, and she is what is linked to all the molded and shit. So Chris, like in the end of Zoe takes place after 7, and you're finishing off the last of the Bakers that's known to be alive. That's, still insane shit. The Son, the Saw whip-off, Jigsaw's knockoff. This guy has a little bit mix of his Jigsaw in this, but Not a Hero is mainly very action-oriented. It's very militaristic, so you're going to do a lot of shooting, gunning, and dealing with Mr. Jigsaw's stupid shit. But it basically ties and cliffhangs what likely will lead into Resident Evil 8, as he was trying to sell the stuff about the molded and shit to buyers on the internet. So he was reaching out to people who are into bioweapons and shit. So I wouldn't be surprised if that ties into Resident Evil 8 or some other plot line down the road. But it's just pretty much Chris cleaning up the last of what's going on in the territory of the Baker's house. It's okay. It's free, like I said. It's very action oriented. It's just, it's not the greatest end, I would say, but it's not like terrible, especially if you're into the more action oriented ones. Like I said, I really feel like 7 does a good job of balancing at giving a bit of something for all the fans of different periods of Resident Evil's existence. I really did like Resident Evil 7. It's good. I really, really do recommend the VR mode. But again, that's going to depend on your thoughts on graphics and that. You could wait to see if a next-gen version comes out, because, Capcom has been porting a lot of their games over the years, and I wouldn't be surprised if a new collection for 7 shows up on next-gen, especially since the VR is all carrying over to next-gen for PS5. So there could be a good chance they might make a better version that might have better graphics or something, possibly. It's a chance, but that's of course up to you and that. But either way, I do recommend checking out 7 regardless, even if you don't have VR. I'm just saying, if you have PlayStation VR, you definitely need to try this, unless you have like heart attack problems or something. Like, if you're even slightly interested in survival horror games, this is a game. This is still one of the best VR games I've played, too. Like, Super Hot was a really good one, too. But this is still probably one of the better, exceptional VR games I've experienced on PlayStation VR, so I think there's a little bit of something for everyone. It's certainly not perfect. Like I said, the story still has some kind of issues, but there's some nice throwbacks to older stuff, like I said. But when it comes to the base game with Ethan, like the whole thing with dealing with the Bakers and stuff, I do feel like there was also an odd disconnection with like how Jack's story was resolved in the base game, and then he's brought back into Zoe, for example. Like, you gave an idea that Jack's actually finally dead after the last time you fight him, but then he shows up again in End of Zoe, which, you could make an argument maybe the molded just kind of got a hold of his consciousness again or something. I don't know, it's weird. You'd have to watch videos on, like, plot hole kind of things. Like, there definitely is different things that kind of counter each other a little bit in this game. So, but I really, really did enjoy it. I really did. I really, really did. I really like it. So, those are my thoughts on Resident Evil 7, Biohazard 7. Get the Golden Edition so you can get everything. Like, the only way I would recommend getting the base game is you get, like, super cheap which from what I've seen, still at least demands like $15 used, which is weird when I said, like I said, you can get the gold version new on PlayStation 4 right now on Amazon for $27. So unless you're getting it for a few dollars, I just recommend getting the gold version. It's definitely worth $30 for sure. Even then, I would give the gold version obviously a $60 sticker. When I say the base game's even worth a $60 sticker, but those are my thoughts. If you feel like you have any questions or anything, feel free to leave a comment down below or message me on Twitch. If you feel like you learned anything interesting in the video, feel free to leave a like. And if you feel like you learned absolutely nothing of interest at all, feel free to leave a dislike, guilt-free. Just watch out when you go to that basement down there. I still hear Jack walking down there.